So a bunch of people asked me to review the painted miniatures that they had posted in my Discord. And so I thought I would. And I thought I'd begin by showing you my standard of miniature. Now, this is a test miniature, one of my Eldar that I'm painting to establish the colour scheme as I explained in the video about it. And I would rate this about a 6, right? I consider this to be sort of tabletop ready. I mean, this guy isn't finished, as you can see by the metallics on this one. He needs more work. But the general quality of the armour and the colour scheme and the highlighting and the edge highlighting, you can see that's what I'd consider about a 6. Tabletop ready, looks reasonable. I'm relatively happy with it, but it's not perfect. A lot more work could be done, especially if you look on the legs and the foot there. You can see that there's no blending that's happened there because I haven't taken the time to do it yet. And so these are the sorts of things I look for, the smoothness of the transitions. I'm quite happy with the smoothness of the transition on the helmet and the back flute bits. And I'm very pleased with this edge highlighting on the gun, even if I'm not happy with the colour of the gun, which is surprising because normally I suck at edge highlighting. But otherwise, it's not too bad, so I'd give that a 6. And so that's roughly the standard. But the final thing is also the kind of impact of the miniature as well, the overall aesthetic effect that the miniature has. And one thing that I think a lot of people who have posted pictures don't realise is that lighting affects everything. It really can change the quality of the miniature, which is why I set up like proper lights when I'm taking photos of my ones, because it's a good soft light is very forgiving and hides a lot of problems. I learned this firsthand when I went to Warhammer World and I saw a bunch of the miniatures that you'll recognise from the codexes and things like that, that are not under the fancy lights, and they're under relatively simple lights actually. And you can suddenly see a lot of problems and details and errors and mistakes that have been made. And it made me feel a lot better actually about my own painting. Suddenly I was like, oh, that's not as amazing as it looks in the pictures. And I don't know whether Games Workshop, like, Photoshop them at all or anything like that. And I'm not even judging if they do. They're a company. They're selling miniatures. Why wouldn't they? Right. I'm just saying that the nice lights really, really help with everything. And this one, I've just been using this lamp here that I used to paint. So this is not a nice light to take pictures. But this is the standard I'll be using. Let's have a look at other people's work. Now this is by critic, and this is some sort of Black Templar Captain. And the only thing that strikes me as a bit off about this is the darkness of the miniature. Now, the overall work is obviously fantastic, which you can see for yourself. The blending on the axe and the cloak are really good. The general crispness of the edge highlights are fantastic, and the overall composition is great. The only issue that I think it loses points on is the fact that it's almost impenetrably dark at places. So you can't quite get a proper feel for the entire thing. But that is reasonably minor complaint, all things considered. Give this a solid 6. He's also done a bunch of Black Templar chaplains. This is one good example, and I think this looks really nice. Again, the only problem, and it's probably a lighting issue rather than a painting issue, is that it just comes across as being too dark. But I really like the scrolls on this chaplain, and I really like the cloak that you can see around him, because he's gone to the effort to make it textured, and that's a really difficult thing to do, actually. I'm really terrible at it, so I tend not to. But even on a close-up shot like this texturing still looks good because he's been really consistent with it. So excellent, excellent job. And the Crozius, or however that's pronounced, looks fantastic. So I'll give this guy a 7. This is Jamie's Alpha Legion, I think it is. Chaos Warriors, and some disciple thing. I don't know. I don't play Chaos. I play Thousand Suns because I'm sophisticated. But these look nice. I like the shiny metallic effect on the armor. Looks really good. Overall, the impression as well is excellent. The bases strike me as being particularly good because I have done my snow bases in a very lazy and terrible way. And his look way, way better. I don't know what the texture paint on the base is, but it looks great with the snow on top of it. I'm probably going to have to copy this and go down to my local Games Workshop and get whatever texture paint that is, because it looks so much better than the bases I'm using. So very, very good. For some criticisms, I would suggest that perhaps the models feel like they could be better highlighted and blended. Like for on the chain axe there, I would probably have done a silver on the blade, on the bits themselves, to differentiate them from the rest of the axe. But that's a small aesthetic choice. And I suppose the blending on the fire could have been slightly more smooth, but these are quite minor complaints. Overall, they look really good and they're really effective, so I'll give them a 6 too. Trying not to be too generous. So this is 009's Chaos Space Marines, and this is a good example of how lighting really does change the effect of the miniature, because it looks to me like this probably is a very well painted miniature, and he's got some other ones that look great, and the crispness of the painting is good. You know, very little in the way that I can object to there. But the models, because of the lighting, it look kind of flat. This one looks quite good, actually. You can see the depth in the shadows there, and the guts look great. But the Chaos Space Marines themselves, they look kind of washed out. And I can't tell whether that's just because of the choice of the light blue with the gold, or if it's because of the light not properly bringing out the richness of the colour. So I'm going to give these a 5, because overall wasn't wowed, but no, I'm not trying to be mean about the painting. In fact, he's posted some more Chaos Warriors later on, and these look much better. So maybe it is a question of the colour combination he's gone for, because he's obviously gone for a lot darker armour on this guy, and the gold stands out a lot more, and you can see the glowing runes in the axe, which are well done. So obviously, I think it's the light or the colour composition in the previous one that is letting those ones down. I mean, this I would give a 6 or a 7. Numbskullery has done these from some fantasy game. It's not Warhammer, but these look great. They look. One of the things I like about these is they look just kind of real. Like, they're not excessively over the top, and so on the tabletop I bet these look very, very effective. The shields look fantastic, by the way. The shields look absolutely brilliant, and you can see the guys all really fit into the same theme. And then he's got this ogre with it. Now, I was going to be critical of this ogre because the colour palette's all quite drab, but actually there's kind of an effectiveness to that, and the overall quality of the painting is very high. You can see that he's using terrible lighting, and still it looks very good. You can see the details very well picked out. And the drabness of it kind of suits an ogre. You know, it looks appropriate, and I like the reddish nose that he's got going on with it as well. The whole thing really looks fantastic. I'm going to give it a 7. This is Asteroid Chart's first model, and I'm blown away by the quality. There have been loads of these posted. This is my first model. It's like, dude, this is amazing. My first model was this giant gloopy Gretchen that had a million layers, all badly painted with paint on everything that it shouldn't be on and whatnot. These look amazing. This is some Custodes jet bike guy. I don't know anything about Custodes, to be honest. But this looks really good, and I'm actually really impressed. As a first effort, you should be really proud of this. I've only got small things that I would recommend. Perhaps darker ink on the wings, on the winged bits, and then bring them out in a very light gold. But otherwise, this just looks really good, especially for a first effort. So I'm going to give this a 5. This is Mr. Twisted Frenzies, or one of his first efforts. And this is much more in the wheelhouse of something I can give a solid critique on, actually. As you can see, it hasn't used any washes or any highlights or anything, which is understandable. It's your first model. But on the shield here, you can see a little bit where the paint's gone on the rim. And so a bit of touching up needs to be done. And generally, I would probably say that on other little bits as well. But overall, it's not bad, and he's done well for this Stormcast Eternal. I would rate this a 3, but that's a really good start. I mean, my first attempt was not a 3. So that's a really good start. And with very small amounts of extra work, it can easily go up to a 4 or 5. So it's, you know, put a wash on it and then just highlight some of the raised areas. Possibly learn how to do edge highlighting. And man, this is going to look great. This is Inquisitor Spyron Hark's Astral Claws, and I've never heard of this. I don't know if it's homebrew or not, but these look great. I like the iron armour, the metal armour, and it's done well, and the blue and gold really complements it, and it looks just generally great. It's really consistent, well done. There are small bits. I mean, I think possibly better highlighting on this bit would be nice, But otherwise, looks really good. I like the Land Raider as well, because I like Land Raiders. But also, this looks good, and it looks suitably grungy. I don't have the balls to do grunginess on my Space Marines, or any of my models, actually, because I spend so much time painting them to make them look as perfect as possible. I don't dare ruin them with dirt. Like, for me, it seems like a brave thing to do, and I just don't have the courage to do it, because if I mess it up, then that's the model ruined, and that's hours of time wasted. I'm just not doing it. So as far as I'm concerned, my units have literally just come off the showroom, right? They've come off parade. They all finished up their armor, and now they're going to the first battle of the first mission of the first campaign, okay? This is, like, them at their best is when you see my models. You don't see them halfway through the campaign. This is Cry Havoc's flying Tyranid thing. I couldn't identify if you wanted me to. And overall, I think the impression of this is really good. I like the purple and the sort of bone colour. I think it works really well together. And he's done quite an effective job of dry brushing as well. But this leads me to one of the problems that I have with dry brushing, is this kind of effect on the wing here. We've got this kind of raspy, scratchy bit on the flat bit. This is why I don't use dry brushing much, because I don't like the look of it. It gives it a wrong texture, and it makes it feel kind of lazy in parts, and so I don't tend to dry brush very much, if at all. And this is something that I think really he should have gone back with the original base colour and just painted over to make that a darker area, which would have been fine. But also, along the bone finger bits here, you can see that that needs touching up as well. So I'm going to give this, although the overall aesthetic is good, and I'm sure when these are all on the table you can't see any of these details anyway, so I'm sure it looks great, but I'm going to give this a 4 because I'm very, very mean. These are Nakathrasch's Tyranid Warriors. Now, I can't tell what edition these come from. I'm sure they're not 2nd or 3rd, because in 2nd and 3rd edition, the Tyranid Warriors had tiny, tiny heads, like literal pinheads, on top of their massive, ungainly bodies. These have massive, ungainly bodies, but also really big heads. So I'm guessing these are like 4th or 5th or 6th edition. But they look fantastic, right? The colour scheme is really good, and the light blue on the scales very much complements the darker purple sort of main underbit. That looks really well, and it looks really good, and he's done a very, very, very smooth job of highlighting these, so it looks natural and it doesn't draw the eye. It just adds to the overall composite picture of the thing, and the scales are really, really contrasting. They start very dark at the top and then highlight to a very light blue at the end, and that makes them, and because of the sort of, you know, the tessellated effect of them, it makes them very attractive and very easy on the eye. Really good choice of colours, and really well executed as well. If I were to be critical, I would say that the tongue on the one on the left is slightly flat. It just seems to be a basic red. I think he could have done more with that. And I'm not sure about the pink and the blue in the guns. I probably would have gone for a dark red on the inside of the holes, just because the blue seems to clash with the pink somewhat to me, and it looks kind of flat, right? It looks as though it's not as three-dimensional as it should be. But otherwise, that's me just being hypercritical. I really like the effect of these, and I bet an entire army of these with this colour scheme looks excellent on the board. So I'm going to give it a 7. This is Cry Havoc's Genestealer Patriarch. Now, I always wanted a Genestealer Cults army, but the thing is, they're shit. So I never got one. I'm an elite army player. I don't want hordes of models generally, but I do love Genestealers, and I've always loved the Genestealer Patriarch, and maybe one day I'll just get one just to paint, because I really like the idea of the model. And I think this one's relatively well executed, although I can see that he's fallen into another trap, a painting trap that I personally don't like, although I'm not saying it's necessarily bad, right? So overall, the model's really well composed. I like the pink and it being the inside and the fleshy bit in the brain, whereas the sort of yellowy bone colour on the outside looks good. There's nothing wrong with that. Although perhaps maybe a slightly darker pink or something would have been more striking. But I think the effect is most pronounced on this with the wash. Now, washes are very important, but they're a sort of double-edged blade. They give you very quick and easy depth to the model, but if overused, they lead to this, you can see here, this kind of greyish, powderish looking area there, And it gives, and here as well, you can see it is shadow, but there's something about the texture of it that takes me out of the experience of looking at the model. And so I find myself, sorry, I'll go back to that, I didn't mean to do that. So I find myself less inclined towards it because of that. Now, like I said, I'm not saying he's done like a poor or inferior job or anything like that, because it does look good. But it's small things like that that are bugbears for me, and I don't like it. I don't like that sort of effect. So I'm going to give this a 5. I was only going to feature one model from each person, but this is Naka Thrasher's Wraithguard, and man, does this look good. Right? He's done a really good job on the white, which is actually grey, that he's highlighted up to a light grey. Really good job there. Really good choice of colours. The green and the blue really work with the white, and then the red gems, really, really nice. Just overall, this is a really lovely model to look at. And I bet, again, an entire army of these in this colour scheme, I bet it looks beautiful. Right? The only thing I would say is perhaps maybe a bit more fading on the gem, which is a really small complaint. Overall, the model is really well highlighted, really well faded, very crisp to look at, and is a very, very lovely example of what the Eldar can look like when painted well. So I'll give this a 7. These are Malignant Narcissism's Drakari, and I really like the effect that he's got on this. So as you can see, he's got the appropriately sort of ashen dark skin, and that really plays well, I think, with the sort of bone-coloured armour, which he's done reasonably well, even though these are painted to a tabletop standard, right? These aren't, like my models, no one's winning a golden demon here, but like these are very, very nice. And again, they're all very consistent. Like you can see when his army's lined up, that looks great, and I bet on a table that looks really good when they're taking objectives and crushing the enemy. And I really like the blue in the ports here, particularly. Like the light blue really suits the overall colour scheme. So really impressed with these, actually. And like I said, he's done like the entire army of them, and they just look appealing. They're just nice to look at. I don't say that lightly because I really don't like Drakari. So good job, basically. I'll give these a 6. This is Creepy Reaper's, probably a Warhammer Orc Lord. I'm pretty sure this is a really ancient model. This looks familiar from back when I was a kid, frankly. But overall, this is not a bad job. It looks obviously suitably orky and grim, but I have to say I would have preferred stronger highlights in silver on the armour. Even if it's just like little dabs on the tips of the spikes or on edge highlighting or something like that, just to bring, because otherwise it feels a bit flat without it. And maybe it's just the lighting, I can't tell, right? So all I can go on is what I've got. And also the skin, I think, could have been highlighted up to a bit more of a bright green. Again, just to improve the contrast, make the model more readable, and make it a more appetizing thing to want to look at. Because at the moment, the colours are a bit drab, and it isn't the most eye-catching thing in the world. Although I have to say, it looks like it's been very competently painted. So I'm going to give it a 5. These are Old Man Playwell's Castellan robots. Now, I really like the Castellan robot because it's got that kind of 1950s sci-fi look to it. And overall, this is a good paint scheme. I'd probably rate it a 5 because it's effective to look at, and it has been executed with completely decent competence. But this is one of those models where I've always looked at these and thought these would really benefit from an airbrush. All of the fine shading that I got from the dark blue to the light blue on my Thousand Suns was all done by airbrush because it just saves you so many man hours. And on large, broad, but curved plates like this, it really brings out that sort of the shading from light to dark, and it just gives the model such depth when you do it. And unfortunately, he hasn't done it on this one. So I would say that this would be the ideal candidate for it. But otherwise, these look great. I like the sky blue pink, actually. Sky blue pink. The sky blue on them. I actually think is very effective, because normally these are kind of a rusty red colour. But this is very interesting and nice to look at. So I'll give these a 5. This is Malefic's Primaris Captain, and it looks great. Really like the sort of corn red he's gone for. This kind of, it's kind of a purplish or muted red, and he's highlighted it nicely with a brighter red, and you can see all the highlights on the little shield there looks really nice, really well done, very subtle, very clean paint as well. The gold trim really complements it. The fact that he's gone to the effort of giving the blue stones on the sort of rosary beads is a really nice touch. I always just paint them silver because I'm lazy, but actually his looks great, and they're nicely picked out with a black outline around them, so very, very good. I think possibly the paper could have been done a little bit better, but that's a very minor complaint. Overall, I will give this a 7. Scree has posted a bunch of his armies, and the thing is, you can see here already the lighting is atrocious, right? Now, of course, everyone's lighting is, unless you've got a reason to have professional lighting, your lighting is going to be atrocious. And because it's so zoomed out, I can't really tell about the detail of the thing, so I've just got to give an overall impression. But overall, these look really nice. They're very consistently painted, and so like the Wraith Lord's very impressive looking. And so the whole thing looks cohesive. And I think that is actually a really important thing for an army to have, that it looks like it belongs in the same army when it's all on the board. I really do put a lot of stock in that, because I do play the game rather than just paint. And so I'll give these a 6. And finally, we're going to look at Bilbo Swaggin's Necron Overlord, which is a fascinating model, in my opinion, because he has given it a paint, the sort of paint scheme I would expect to see on some sort of Warhammer Lizardman High Chief or something. And so that in and of itself is very interesting and unusual. Again, the sky blue and the glaring green is an interesting combination on the silver and gold metals. So it's hard to tell the actual quality of the job, to be honest, because of the light. And I know I keep going back to this, but unfortunately it really is one of those issues, because weirdly it looks a little bit flat, even though I'm pretty sure it's not, because as he said, this was his first attempt at glazing. And as you can see on the crystal on the foot, he's done a good job edge highlighting this. And so it's probably that the light is hiding, the low quality of the light is hiding the detail that he has painted. And you can see like the color differential on the side, right? So he's obviously put a lot of work into this. And on the orb as well, he's done actually a really interesting job with the sort of dark stripes on it. I think that's fascinating. I've got a Farseer who I've given an orb, so I'm going to be taking pointers from this. But overall, I really like it. There's something pleasantly garish about it. And again, if you had an entire Necron army that was painted in this deliberately garish way, but well painted as it is, then it could be a very interesting thing to see on the tabletop, and a very, very pleasant thing to have to play against. So I'll give this a 6. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. A lot of people asked for this, and I thought, well, why not? So if you want to join the Discord, you can find a link in the description or pinned in the comments. Come and post your Warhammer stuff. Come and play video games with us, and I'll see you next time.